Hello, Tony here, back on my channel once more with another deck profile. Having explored Ogdoadic last week, we wrap up our coverage of Ancient Guardians with a deck that's much more on the fun side. Sliding down from the stars to hit the field, this week's deck profile will have us return once again to the unconventional with the Bears of the Ursarctic. Now, if the artwork didn't give things away, the Ursarctic are another archetype based off of a constellation. Just like their cousins, the Drytrons, who are mechanical dragons based off of the Draconis constellation, the Ursarctics are a series of mechanical bears based off of the Ursa Major Constellation, or as some people may know it as, the Big Dipper. And much like Drytron, the Ursarctic are an archetype that attempts to take a summoning mechanic into a new and unconventional direction, this time with the Synchro Summon. While most conventional Synchro Summons are made by the sum of a tuner and non-tuner's levels, Ursarctic do the opposite, summoning out Synchro monsters made by the difference. Now, to be honest, I'm well aware that I'm a little late to the bear party on this one. By the time this video releases, there are probably a number of profiles already out there for this deck. Often these profiles will be playing a variety of engines ranging from Invoked to Deep Seas. But one thing is pretty common among them, and that's a majority of these combos involved in these profiles seem to be in a race to see who can use the least Ursarctic monsters possible to build a board. And as weird as it may be to admit, that might actually be the most meta Ursarctic strategy possible. See, as you'll discover soon enough, the manner in which Ursarctics put themselves onto the field can be quite costly. And as a result of that, attempting to build any large board in one turn with just Ursarctic monsters requires a hefty hand investment that you would rather just outsource to one of these engines for a much cheaper cost. Thus, when designing an Ursarctic build that can contend with the meta, it actually makes perfect sense to have your engine be your main playmaker while your actual Ursarctic monsters take a backstage as support, because it's just economically more efficient. But that's not what my channel aims to do. While my profiles often incorporate meta methodology, the goal of this channel is to take the playstyle presented by an archetype and optimize its performance to that playstyle. With Ursarctics, the goal is no different. While Ursarctics struggle with putting up powerful boards in a single turn, that was never its playstyle. In reality, Ursarctics are more akin to a tempo deck, designed to advance itself through the course of several turns to gradually build up a board. Realizing that, the deck profile that I have here is one that attempts to make the most out of this with just Ursarctics and nothing else, making use of their own playstyle without larger engines to play powerful interaction games capable of spinning out attackers on your opponent's turn for disruption, while putting up consistency generators on your turn to recuperate, something that I hope to showcase as I get through the deck profile. Anyway, I've droned on enough. Without a further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Starting things off, we begin our deck profile with a series of level 7 Beast Ursarctics subclassified as Ursarctic Micros, consisting of our 3 Ursarctic Mikpolar, 3 Ursarctic Mikbillis, and 1 Ursarctic Miktanus. All the Ursarctics share a common effect where during the main phase, as a quick effect, you contribute 1 level 7 or higher monster from your hand to special summon themselves onto the field. To complement that effect, the Ursarctics also have an effect that trigger upon their special summon, with Mikpolar allowing to search for any Ursarctic monster from your deck to your hand, Mikbillis allowing to special summon one other Ursarctic from your hand, and Miktanus allowing to add one Ursarctic monster from your graveyard. With a very simple means of putting themselves onto the field in an equally simplistic condition to trigger their effects, the Ursarctic Micros are meant to serve as your consistency generators for the deck. Mikpolar allows you to add any other Ursarctic from your deck to the hand, often allowing you to grab the right Ursarctic that you need to continue your plays with. Mikbillis allows you to special summon a second Ursarctic from your hand for free, circumventing that Ursarctic summoning cost to allow you to put up 2 Ursarctics onto the field for the price of 1 for larger plays. And Miktanus, being the most conditional of the 3, allows you to recycle used Ursarctics, making it a great way to swap out dead Ursarctics in your hand for live ones in the graveyard. Furthermore, thanks to the quick effect nature of their effects, you can special summon them on your opponent's turn on top of your own to double up on the consistency effects while circumventing their hard once per turn conditions. Finally, due to the fact that they're all level 7 monsters, the Ursarctics can fuel each other in their own summoning effects, allowing you the option to freely choose in a hand of Ursarctics which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to tribute to develop your plays with. Rising higher up, the next line of monsters we play are a series of level 8 tuner beast warrior Ursarctics subclassified as Ursarctic Mega, consisting of our 3 Ursarctic Megatanus, our 2 Ursarctic Mikbillis, as well as our 1 Ursarctic Mikpolar. Possessing the same quick summoning effects shared among other Ursarctic monsters, the Ursarctic Megas have effects that trigger upon their special summon while you control another Ursarctic monster. With Megatanus allowing you to change one monster your opponent controls to face down defense position, Mikbillis allowing you to banish one card from your opponent's graveyard, and Mikpolar here allowing you to destroy one spell or trap on the field. Possessing effects that directly interact with your opponent, the Ursarctic Megas make the most of their quick summoning effects to put themselves onto the field on your opponent's turn to act as disruption. Megatanus' book effect serves as your main form of disruption, booking monsters your opponent controls to prevent their use in X-Deck plays, while also denying them from leaving the field to be resummoned by other effects. Mikbillis' banish effect is equally useful, banishing key graveyard cards that need to be reused so that they can't be recycled. And while you often won't be disrupting much with Mikpolar, he does serve as a great end of main phase trick to blow up set back row before your turn begins to clear the way. However, as you may notice, the Ursarctic Mega monsters are limited by their need to control another Ursarctic monster to activate, and that's where their temple playstyle of this deck comes in. The game plan of this deck is that on your turn, you'll be special summoning out your Ursarctic Micro monsters to load up on your Ursarctic Mega monsters. Then, on your opponent's turn, while you're still controlling that Ursarctic Micros, you'll then be special summoning out your Ursarctic Mega monsters to disrupt your opponent with. From there, on your following turn, you'll then proceed to use these amassed Ursarctics for attacks or X-Deck plays to further pressure your opponent while setting you up to repeat the process once again. And of course, while cards like Ursarctic Mikbillis speed up the process a little bit, the ultimate game plan will always be this: a gradual development of your board to slowly overwhelm your opponent. Moving into our non-Ursarctic support, we begin with our 3 Melfi Caddy. Caddy is a level 2 monster with the effect that while on the field, should your opponent normal or special summon a monster, or declare an attack, you can return Caddy to your hand to add any beast monster from your deck to the hand. Furthermore, during your end phase, if Caddy is in your hand, you can special summon Caddy from your hand. Capable of searching into all your Ursarctic Micros, Caddy serves as another way to get into all your consistency generators. And unlike most decks where you would have to wait until the following turn to make use of the card that you searched off of Caddy, thanks to the Ursarctic quick effect nature, you can always make use of your searched Micros regardless of the present turn. Furthermore, while Caddy is intended to be your sole normal summon for the deck in a deck that rarely ever normal summons, thanks to its own special summon effect, even if you were to commit your normal summon to another monster, Caddy ensures that it will find a way to end up on your side of the field before your opponent's turn rolls around to guarantee you a search. Now, one neat target that you might search off of your Melfi Caddy outside of your Ursarctic Micros is your 1 Hop Ear Squadron. A level 2 tuner, Hop Ear Squadron allows you, as a quick effect, to target one monster you control and then special summon itself onto the field to perform a Synchro Summon with it and the targeted monster. As a level 2 tuner that can also special summon itself on your opponent's turn, your prime target for its effect will be any of your Ursarctic Micro monsters. Due to the lackluster stats that the Ursarctic Micros have, they are often vulnerable targets for attacks if you leave them on the field for too long. Hop Ear Squadron here provides you an easy means to convert those Micros into powerful level 9 Synchros, removing this vulnerability while putting out monsters like Shen Shen or Croco Dragon who have powerful effects that can impact the game out of nowhere. Finally, rounding up the deck, we have our hand traps in our 3 Ash Blossom alongside our 3 Effect Veiler. On top of being decent hand traps overall, the tuner status of these hand traps allows us at worst to Synchro Summon with them and Ursarctic Micro monsters to summon out powerful level 8 and level 10 Synchros, giving them some use outside of just being hand traps. And while not relevant at the moment, it's also important to note that both Ash and Veiler are 1 level away from your Melfi Caddy, a feature that will become relevant as we explore the extra deck. Moving into the spells, we begin things off with the Ursarctic field spell in our 2 Ursarctic Big Dipper. Big Dipper is a field spell which states that once per turn, should you tribute a monster to activate an Ursarctic effect, you can instead banish an Ursarctic from your graveyard instead. Furthermore, each time a monster is special summoned, Ursarctic Big Dipper gains a counter. Should your opponent then special summon a monster while you control an Ursarctic Synchro monster, and this card has at least 7 counters, you can remove all counters from this card to permanently take control of that monster. As you have probably already deduced, the requirement to tribute level 7 monsters from your hand to special summon out your Ursarctic monsters can be quite costly. with the requirement of just putting up 2 Ursarctic monsters on the field, essentially burning up 4 cards from your hand. Big Dipper provides you a way to circumvent this cost by using your graveyard as the cost instead, allowing you to make use of previously attributed Ursarctics a second time for the summon of your Ursarctic monsters. And it's important to note that this fact is a soft once per turn, meaning that replacing a present copy of Big Dipper with a new one allows you to circumvent the cost upwards of twice per turn, thus giving you a reason to play 2. And while the monster stealing effect is rather specific with its requirement of needing an Ursarctic Synchro monster to resolve, something that might be a little difficult to do, it is undoubtedly an incredibly powerful effect. In our current metagame, almost every deck special summons, with a good majority of them being required to special summon more than 5 times before being able to put up any reasonable form of disruption, making it very easy for Big Dipper to fill up on counters before any real threat comes out to ultimately take that threat. And it's notable to point out that Big Dipper gains counters whenever any monster is special summoned, meaning that you can also special summon out your own Ursarctics and Big Dipper will gain the counters. This combined with your use of Ursarctic Megas and Synchro to disrupt your opponent, it's very possible to set your opponent back such that they would be forced to extend further to put out the same threats, allowing Big Dipper more opportunities to gain counters to ultimately make it such likely that it would take your opponent's monsters in that exchange. Moving on from there, we next have our 3 Ursarctic Departure. Ursarctic Departure is a normal spell that when activated has you discard 1 card from your hand to add 2 Ursarctic monsters from your deck to the hand. Furthermore, while in the graveyard, except for the turn it was sent there, should one of your Ursarctic monsters tribute a monster to activate its effects, you can banish Departure from your graveyard instead. As most decks would need, Ursarctic Departure acts as a rota for the deck, allowing you to trade any card in your hand for any 2 Ursarctics from your deck. Since most of your Ursarctic plays commonly require that you have an Ursarctic Micro and Ursarctic Mega to function, this card provides you an easy way to get into both. Furthermore, thanks to the graveyard effect, Departure at worst serves as a way to reduce the cost of your Ursarctic plays on the following opponent's turn, ensuring that regardless of if your opponent stops Departure or not, you have the means of continuing other plays from there. Wrapping up the Ursarctic spells, we have our 3 Ursarctic Slider. Slider is a quick play spell which, when activated, allows you to target any Ursarctic monster in your graveyard or banished and special summon it. Now, in most cases, Slider acts as a simple monster reborn for the deck, reviving Ursarctic monsters that may have been tributed for the effect of another Ursarctic to help you build your board. But on top of that, thanks to its quick play nature, Slider also acts as a cheeky way to cheat out Ursarctic Megas on your opponent's turn, special summoning one that may have been sent to the graveyard or banished in the prior turn to apply its disruption effect on your opponent, making Slider not only fantastic recovery but also pseudo disruption as well. Wrapping up the spells, we finish things off with some staples in our 3 Pot of Prosperity, 1 Monster Reborn, as well as our 1 Call by the Grave. Now, in regards to Prosperity, I had a hard time debating whether I should play Prosperity over something like Extravagance. Since in most cases you won't be relying on your extra deck too much, neither card hinders your plays if you were to pay for their costs. And some would argue Extravagance, allowing you to see more cards, allows you to see more Ursarctics to pay for their effects. But I'd argue seeing more cards is less beneficial compared to seeing specific cards. In most situations, seeing cards like Mikpolar and Departure have a much larger long-term impact than 2 random Ursarctics. And while it's perfectly possible that Extravagance can allow you to see those cards also, being able to dig 6 deep for them is so much better in my opinion. And thus, I'm playing Prosperity. Going into the traps, we start things off with our 2 Ursarctic Quincharge. Quincharge is a continuous trap that allows you to pay 700 life to activate one of 2 effects. Either you can add 1 Ursarctic monster from your graveyard to your hand, or tribute 2 Ursarctics on the field even if they're face down to summon out an Ursarctic Synchro monster whose level is equal to the difference. Furthermore, should an Ursarctic Synchro monster be destroyed by your opponent's attack, you can make your opponent shuffle back cards from their hand, field, and graveyard until the total among them is 7. Now, Quincharge is a unique card. At the cost of less than 1/10 of your total life, Quincharge allows you to either get back an Ursarctic monster from your graveyard or summon out an Ursarctic Synchro monster. The first option is a great means of recovery, allowing you to grab back any tributed Ursarctic monster to be special summoned again or used again as tribute. The second mode allows you an easy way to convert the Ursarctics that you put onto the field on your opponent's turn into Synchros, not only allowing the converted Ursarctics to dodge effects or threats, but also allowing you to make your Synchros much sooner without having to wait for your turn to roll around. And what's nice about that effect is a soft once per turn, meaning that having 2 Quinn charges online allows you to get the effect twice or apply both modes in one turn to double the advantage or double the playmaking. Finally, while the equalizer effect may rarely come up, it does serve as an interesting deterrent against your opponent, punishing them for aggression by forcing their advantage in all 3 zones to dwindle down to 7, something that for some decks can basically amount to a board reset. Finally, wrapping up our main deck, we're playing 2 Call of the Haunted. Like Ursarctic Slider, Call serves as another nifty revival trick to be used on your opponent's turn, allowing to revive your Ursarctic Megas as a means of disruption. Now you can also play things like Back to the Front too, but the main reason why we're playing Call is simply due to the fact it summons out the Megas in attack, where their high attack can be an asset while their weak defense cannot be a liability. Moving into the X deck, we start things off with our core Synchro monster in our 3 Ursarctic Polari. Polari is a level 1 Synchro monster that actually cannot be Synchro Summoned. Instead, Polari can only be special summoned from the X deck by sending a tuner and non-tuner to the graveyard with a difference in levels of 1. When special summoned, Polari directly activates Usarctic Big Dipper directly from your deck, and while face up on the field, Polari can tribute a level 7 or higher monster to add back to hand or special summon an Ursarctic monster from your graveyard. Being the only level 1 Synchro monster in the game, Polari comes packing with some pretty great effects. Starting off with its on-summon effect, being able to activate Big Dipper directly from your deck is huge, not only giving you an easy way to access cost mitigation for all your other Ursarctics, but as a Synchro monster, immediately turning online Big Dipper stealing effects. These things are further complemented by Polari's on-field effect, which can be paid through that Big Dipper. Acting as another monster reborn for the deck, Polari essentially pays back your summon of him by summoning back another Ursarctic from your graveyard, not only making his summon pretty much costless, but also sending you up to summon out your bigger Synchros from there. Furthermore, it's also important to note that Polari can be summoned by sending any tuner and non-tuner combination with a difference of levels in 1. Meaning that while you often will be sending an Ursarctic Micro and Mega to summon out this card, you can also send other combinations like a Malfi Caddy and a Hand Trap, or an Ursarctic Mega and a level 9 Synchro to summon out this card as well, give you some flexibility in how you bring it out. Now, one such powerful Synchro monster that Polari gives us access to is one of our 2 Ursarctic Septetron. A level 7 Synchro monster, Septetron cannot be Synchro Summoned. Instead, Septetron can only be special summoned from the X deck by sending a level 8 or higher tuner monster and any non-tuner whose difference in levels is 7. While on the field, Septetron negates the effects of all monsters summoned from the X deck without a level, and should your opponent special summon any monster, you can add 1 Ursarctic card from your deck to your hand. Summonable off of Polari alone in a combo that we'll explore later, Septetron is your ultimate boss monster for the deck and your win condition. His skill drain effect essentially covers a good chunk of the current meta, completely shutting down decks like Dragon Link or Zodiac. This is further bolstered by that search effect, allowing you to search for other Ursarctics whenever your opponent special summons that you can use to disrupt your opponent further. This in combination with a generally present Big Dipper steal gives you essentially 2 additional avenues of disruption on top of his own skill drain effect to ruin your opponent with, making this card a game ender all on its own. Moving on to the other Ursarctic Synchro for the deck, we have our 1 Ursarctic Grand Chariot. Like Septetron, Grand Chariot is a level 7 Synchro monster that cannot be Synchro Summoned, but can be special summoned from the X deck by sending a level 8 or higher tuner monster and any non-tuner whose difference in levels is 7. When summoned, Grand Chariot can target up to 2 other cards on the field and destroy them, and while on the field, Grand Chariot can negate the effects that would target your other cards by distributing monsters from your hand or field. Compared to Septetron, Grand Chariot isn't quite as game-ending. Acting mostly as a form of removal for the deck, you tend to go into Grand Chariot in only 2 situations. The first is when you can go for a game in which the field clear opens up the board for the kill. The second is off a Quinn Charge's effect on your opponent's turn. By tributing a Polari and any Ursarctic Mega monster on your opponent's turn for Quinn Charge's second mode, you could summon out Grand Chariot on your opponent's turn to destroy 2 of their cards as disruption. Sadly, due to the lack of long-term resource generation, Grand Chariot is a card that you will most likely make once and then immediately convert into other plays, making this card a good one-of for the deck. Wrapping up the X deck, we have our 2 level 9 Synchro monsters in our Shen and Crocodile that we can make off of our Hop Ear Squadron. We have our 2 level 8 Synchro monsters in our Sideframe Lord Omega, as well as our Adamancipator Risen Dragite, accessible off of our Effect Veiler. We have 2 level 10s that we can make off of our Ash Blossom in our Time Lord, as well as our Mathmech Final Sigma. And then on top of that, we have some exceeds in the form of a Dracosac and a Dingirsu, as well as one BLS that we can make if we start our turn off with an excess of Ursarctic monsters. Now it's at this point that we reach the combo component of the deck profile. And for this week's deck profile, I have both a set combo as well as a test hand to showcase. The set combo is one that can be executed whenever you manage to gather an Ursarctic Micro monster as well as an Ursarctic Mega monster onto the field, and allows you to directly access your Septetrion. On the other hand, the test hand will be one where we attempt to showcase the gradual board development that Ursarctics are capable of creating throughout the course of several turns. Anyway, the cards are ready, the deck is shuffled, let us begin. Starting with our set combo, this combo can be executed at any point in the game as long as you manage to put both an Ursarctic Micro monster as well as an Ursarctic Mega monster onto the field, and allows us to access our Septetrion by way of our Ursarctic Polari. The way that this combo is going to work is that upon putting both monsters onto the field on our main phase, we can then convert both those monsters into our Ursarctic Polari from our extra deck. Upon Polari summon, I can then directly activate my Big Dipper directly from my deck. From there, I'm going to activate Polari's effect and substitute it with the cost of our Big Dipper by banishing the Ursarctic Micro from our graveyard to summon back the Ursarctic Mega. Now I control a level 8 tuner as well as a level 1 non-tuner whose difference in levels is 7, and that allows me to convert those two monsters to summon out our Ursarctic Septetrion. Alternatively, if I've already opened a Quincharge onto my field, instead of doing so, I can leave both these monsters onto the field, and then on my opponent's turn, I can activate Quincharge's second mode to convert these monsters instead into our Grand Chariot, popping 2 cards on our opponent's side of the field for disruption instead, giving us a few variable options of what we want to activate. But it's important to note that this combo can only be done on its own through making Polari using 2 Ursarctics, since you'll always need an Ursarctic to banish for its effect as well as an Ursarctic in the graveyard to bring back, making this one of the purest and only pure combos that Ursarctic are capable of do exclusively. Moving on into our test hand, the hand that we're going to be working with this week is going to consist of 1 Ursarctic Quincharge, 1 Melfi Caddy, 1 Ursarctic Mikpolar, 1 Ursarctic Miktanus, as well as 1 Ursarctic Departure. Now this hand is rather interesting. Not only did we open the Departure that gives us a lot of options, we've also opened a Melfi Caddy and Ursarctic Quincharge as well, cards that allow us to generate advantage on our opponent's turn, giving us additional disruptions, and as a result of that, I think we could build a rather powerful board. I'm going to start things off by activating the Departure by sending the Miktanus from my hand to the graveyard to add 2 Ursarctics from my deck to my hand, one of them being a Mikpolar and the other being a Mikbillis. From there, I'm going to activate Mikbillis' effect, triggering the Mikpolar to special summon itself to the field, and upon being special summoned, Mikbillis will then special summon out my Mega Polar. Now once again, I've amassed a Mega and a Micro on the field, and I'm going to convert both of those monsters out to summon out my Ursarctic Polari. Polari upon being special summoned will then allow me to activate a Big Dipper directly from my deck. From there, I'm then going to activate Polari's effect, banishing the Mikbillis from my graveyard to resummon back the Mega Polar, in turn giving my Big Dipper 1 additional counter. Then I'm going to convert both the Polari as well as the Mega Polar to summon out my Septetrion, which will then give a second counter to my Big Dipper. From there, I'm then going to set the Quincharge, and while I could normal summon the Melfi Caddy, what I can also do instead is that on my end phase, I'll activate Caddy's effect to special summon it onto the field, giving my Big Dipper a 3rd counter before passing my turn to my opponent. Going into our opponent's turn, we now have a few options in which we can disrupt our opponent. On top of the Septetron negating all the effects of our opponent's Link and Exceeds monsters, we now have a few things we can do to set up into our disruptions. Starting off, I'm going to activate the Quincharge and use Quincharge's first mode to add the Mikpolar in my graveyard back to my hand. From there, should our opponent normal summon a monster, we can then activate Melfi Caddy's effect to bounce it back to our hand to add a Beast monster from our deck to the hand, of which will add a Hoppier Squadron. From there, we're then going to activate the effect of our Mikpolar, banishing the Polari in our graveyard to special summon itself onto the field, of which then Big Dipper will go to 4 counters, while Mikpolar allows us to search into another Ursarctic monster, of which will add a Megatanus. From there, we'll then activate Hoppier Squadron effect, special summoning itself onto the field to make our Big Dipper go to 5 counters, before then Synchro Summoning with it and the Mikpolar to summon out a level 9 Synchro, in this case, something like our Shen, which will then give our Big Dipper 6 counters. From there, should our opponent attempt to do anything, we can then activate Megatanus' effect, banishing the Departure in our graveyard as a substitute to special summon itself onto the field, booking one of our opponent's monsters, and then putting Big Dipper to 7 counters, now making its steal effect live, giving us another form of disruption. Furthermore, we can then pass our turn at this point, taking one of our opponent's monsters, of which will then enter our turn with a Septetrion, a level 9 Synchro monster, and our Ursarctic Megatanus. Finally, wrapping things up with our turn, we start by activating our Quinn Charge once again, this time to add our Mikpolar from our graveyard to the hand. From there, we'll immediately special summon out the Mikpolar by banishing the Miktanus in our graveyard and popping one of our opponent's back row, of which we now amass over 8,000 points of damage, of which we can game our opponent with. But let's say in some odd chance we don't game our opponent, what can we do from here? Well, we can start things off by first sending the Shenshin alongside the Mikpolar to once again summon out a second Polari, before then ending our turn and special summon out the Caddy once again to give our Big Dipper another counter. On our opponent's turn, should our opponent put up a threat, we can activate Quinn Charge's second mode, sending the Megatanus alongside the Polari to the graveyard to summon out a Grand Chariot to pop 2. Then, if our opponent were to commit any monster by special summon, we can activate both the effects of our Melfi Caddy as well as our Septetron, banishing the Caddy back to our hand to add a Mikpolar and then Septetron searching a Megatanus, of which we can then activate Megatanus' effect to special summon itself onto the field by banishing our Polari, giving us once again 2 forms of disruption that we can continuously utilize every turn to tempo out our opponent. And that's going to do it for our Ursarctic deck profile. So, what do I think about the deck? Well, I think the deck has a lot of potential. While the costs are still a little steep and the deck lacks a few members to give it further power and disruption and consistency, the groundwork for an amazing archetype definitely already exists. With a powerful field spell, an equally powerful Rhoda, and a fantastic synchros at their disposal, the deck definitely has some amazing tools to work with, but suffers from being just a little too slow for the meta. However, as with all deck build archetypes, support for them is almost guaranteed, so I will definitely be watching this deck's career with great interest. Regardless though, my name is Tony Yang, this has been an Ursarctic deck profile. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.